The soft drone of the server tower under my desk was the only hint that something had shifted. A hand clutched the fabric of my jeans near the knee, gripping for balance. I didn't flinch, my fingers paused over the keyboard. The back office of the downtown gallery was thick with the scent of old paper and the faint promise of rain drifting in from the cracked window. Yet the sudden rustle of cloth changed the room's energy completely. My gaze stayed level as I looked down. Alison Romero, the gallery's director, and technically my superior, was crouched beneath my desk, hands planted on the floor. Her crisp white blouse and tailored dark skirt, normally immaculate and authoritative, were sharply out of place as she wedged herself between my legs and the metal filing cabinet. Stray strands of her usually perfect hair had escaped her updo. She tilted her head upward, eyes ringed with fatigue. "Act normal," she whispered, her voice barely rising over the hum of cooling fans. "Just keep working." The office door rattled suddenly. The brass handle turned, but the deadbolt I had locked earlier held firm. A voice came through the wood. Marcus, the senior board member, polished, sharp, and bureaucratically dangerous. "Are you in there? The auditors want the Q3 disbursement logs." I glanced at the lock, then at Alison. Her fingers clenched my jeans. Panic radiated through her posture. Even though I spent my life deciphering financial lies, the physical tells were unmistakable. She was trapped. I leaned forward in my grey t-shirt, elbows on the desk, shielding her from view if the door opened. Hands hovering over the keyboard, I called out evenly, "She's not here, Marcus," my voice calm, precise, projecting the focused composure of someone immersed in numbers. A pause, then, "Luca, open the door, I need to check the main terminal." "I'm in the middle of a forensic extraction," I replied, my fingers moving in a precise sequence across the keyboard, pulling routing data Marcus had hoped to conceal. Breaking the data chain would restart the entire system, a 6-hour process. "Do you want to explain the delay to the committee, or should I?" I added. Silence. Marcus understood leverage but not the software in front of me. I had the advantage. "Finally, have her call me the second you see her." His footsteps receded. I didn't move my chair, proximity was essential. The sudden quiet weighed heavily. I glanced under the desk. "He's gone," I murmured. Alison exhaled shakily, not relief, but the sound of a structure under too much strain. She rested her forehead against the metal desk frame. "He changed the passwords on the offshore accounts," she whispered. "I went to his office for the ledger while he was on a call. He came back early." She revealed a worn, blue leather notebook, the offline ledger, proof that the missing funds were Marcus' doing, not hers. "Come up here," I said quietly, shifting from professional barrier to steady instruction. She scrambled out, smoothing her skirt, and stood by the window, grey light casting her determined features in relief. I pulled the blue ledger closer, running my eyes over the worn leather cover. Flipping it open, I scanned the handwritten columns, dates, numbers, signatures. Marcus was meticulous, arrogant even. He kept a shadow ledger because he distrusted digital encryption. He thought analog was invisible. "Is it?" Alison asked, stepping close, her shoulder brushing mine, peering at the page. Rain from the window mingled with the faint scent of bergamot around us. "Everything leaves a trace," I said, opening a blank spreadsheet on my monitor. I began typing rapidly, building a query to cross-reference the ledger's dates with the server's network logs. If I could match Marcus' local logins with the outward wire transfers, we had our proof. "How long?" she asked, eyes fixed on the screen. 48 hours, I replied, fingers flying over the keys. Each line of the 4,000 daily network entries needed careful filtering. Noise could hide a single critical timestamp. Her tense posture slowly shifted to focus, the panic of the back office replaced by sharp determination. "We only have until Wednesday morning," she reminded me. If Marcus realized the ledger was missing, the board vote could be accelerated, and evidence might be erased. "Then we work here," I said flatly, stating the logistical reality. I didn't ask her to leave, I didn't offer comfort. "Lock the door, pull the blinds, we don't leave until the data matches the ink." She nodded sharply, decisively. Sliding the blackout shades down, the office went dark except for the pale glow of the monitors. The city's chaos vanished. Only the hum of the servers and the rhythmic tap of my keyboard filled the room. For 6 hours we spoke only when necessary. Forensic reconciliation is painstaking. Every digital footprint had to align with physical reality. Green text scrolled across the monitors as I parsed network logs. Across the room, Allison studied vendor contracts, hunting shell companies Marcus might have used. Our silence was not emptiness, it was a steady connection, two people carrying the same heavy weight. At 9 o'clock, rain hammered the glass behind the shades. I rubbed the back of my neck and hit execute on the third parsing script. 20 minutes to run. Stretching, I went to the kitchenette for water, and that's when I noticed Allison had dozed off, curled in the armchair, exhaustion finally claiming her. I stood quietly, moving her stack of invoices to the side table and draped my hoodie over her shoulders. Personal feelings had no place here. She needed a shield, not sympathy. Back at my desk, I buried myself in the dual monitors. By morning, the air smelled of stale coffee and toner. Line 402, a wire transfer for $45,000 out of the main endowment fund, routed to Apex Logistics. I pointed it out to Allison. She opened the ledger to the same date. The routing number in the margin traced to an offshore account in the Caymans. At the exact timestamp, the transfer wasn't from her terminal. It came from a device with a MAC address ending in 7B4F Marcus, personal tablet. His executive credentials bypassed the firewall, executing the transfer from the boardroom. The digital footprint connected the offshore account directly to him. Allison's shoulders eased, the weight of impending ruin replaced by vindication. "We have him," I said. A sharp knock rattled the door. Elias, the gallery curator, appeared, scarf askew, face pale. "The auditors are here," he said, breathless. They weren't supposed to arrive until tomorrow, but Marcus had called them in early, demanding access to the servers. Allison stiffened. If they got to the servers before we compiled the report, Marcus could wipe the network logs, destroying the evidence. "Don't panic," I said, my voice low and commanding. "Go back to the lobby, offer them coffee. Tell them the servers are running a routine backup for exactly 12 minutes. Delay them." Elias nodded and sprinted down the hall. I turned to Allison. "I need 4 minutes to lock the network logs behind encryption so Marcus can't touch them." She stepped back, giving me space. I pulled up a command line interface, isolating the directory with Wi-Fi logs and offshore routing traces. Initiating a 256-bit encryption wrap, I locked the files behind a key only I possessed. "Luca," Allison's voice trembled. She stood by the window, arms crossed. "If this fails, I don't just lose the gallery, I lose the artists, everything I've built for 15 years. I walked over, stopping 2 feet away. I didn't touch her. I held her gaze with unwavering certainty. "It's not going to fail. I have the data, the ledger, and the key. He cannot touch you, Allison. I won't let him." Her shoulders relaxed, the tremor fading. "Okay," she breathed, nodding. The monitor flashed green, encryption complete. "Let's meet the auditors," I said, grabbing a flash drive with a copy of the encrypted data. We walked to the lobby together. 3 auditors in grey suits waited, Marcus standing alongside them, projecting calm authority. His eyes narrowed when he saw us. Allison," he said, dripping false sympathy. "The auditors decided to come early due to irregularities. We need immediate access to the servers." "Allison," I interjected, stepping slightly in front of her. "I'm Luca Montgomery, independent forensic accountant. The servers are prepped for extraction." Marcus' mask slipped. "Independent, you don't have authorization." "I have authorization from the director." I handed a formal chain of custody document and the flash drive to the lead auditor. Marcus froze. "You encrypted the network logs?" he asked. "Standard procedure," I said, calm but edged with steel. "Ensuring no one, not even an administrator, can alter data before the audit. Data integrity is the highest priority." The auditors began their work and Marcus' attempts to intervene failed. Allison's composure returned, her cool confidence shining through. The board's attention shifted from panic to evidence. The boardroom doors swung open at 3 o'clock sharp. 5 executive members filed in, their faces tight with concern. Marcus entered last, settling at the head of the table, composed and clearly ready with a defense. The lead auditor stepped forward, projecting the spreadsheet onto the screen. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, voice crisp. "After reviewing the encrypted network logs provided by Mr. Montgomery, we've identified a series of unauthorized wire transfers totaling $420,000, routed to a shell company in the Cayman Islands." A murmur of shock spread through the board. The auditor continued. "These transfers were initiated from an internal IP address, but the MAC address of the device does not match the director's terminal. It is linked to a personal device. Marcus leaned forward, folding his hands on the table. This is deeply concerning. Our network may have been compromised by an external hacker spoofing credentials. I've warned the board for months about our cybersecurity weaknesses. It wasn't a hacker, Marcus, Allison said, her voice cutting sharply across the room. She didn't glance at me or the board, only at Marcus. She slid a photocopy of a page from the blue ledger across the table. That is a copy of the physical ledger recovered from your office, she stated firmly. It shows the dates, amounts, and offshore routing numbers of the missing funds, all in your handwriting. The board stared at the document. Marcus scoffed, raising his voice. This could be anyone's handwriting, a desperate fabrication by a director trying to cover her own incompetence. You're emotional, erratic, and trying to frame me. I didn't respond. Instead, I rose and placed a bound stack of certified forensic reports in front of the oldest board member. This proves the fraudulent transfers were executed using Marcus' personal executive credentials. Page 3 even shows a photograph of the blue ledger uploaded to his personal cloud account. Marcus' face drained of color. You didn't just write it down, I said, voice calm, you backed it up. The forensic footprint is absolute, you are the thief. The room fell silent. The board members exchanged glances, shock and disbelief etched across their faces. Marcus opened his mouth but no words came. He was trapped, caught in his own data. Allison stepped forward, professional and unwavering. The board will vote immediately on your termination and refer these documents to the authorities. I suggest you contact your lawyer. 10 minutes later, Marcus was escorted out. The board voted unanimously to terminate him and freeze his assets pending investigation. The audit would continue, but the focus had shifted entirely. Allison was cleared. We stepped out of the boardroom together, the weight of the past hours pressing down before it finally lifted. The hallway was empty, and the late afternoon sunlight spilled through the windows, casting long golden patterns across the hardwood floor. Allison leaned back against the wall, closing her eyes. It's over, she whispered, a shaky exhale escaping her. I confirmed it's over. I stayed a few feet away, letting her breathe, letting the relief settle. The adrenaline that had been coiled tight in my chest slowly eased. I didn't touch her. That wasn't the point. We had survived the storm, and survival was its own victory. Finally, she opened her eyes. The armor she wore as gallery director, the defense mechanisms that had carried her through countless challenges, were gone. What remained was the brilliant, exhausted woman who had just fought for her life and won. You didn't just fix the books, Luca, she said softly. You stood up to him, you didn't let him intimidate me. He relied on volume and authority, I said quietly. Data doesn't care about volume, neither do I. Her hand reached out hesitantly, resting on my chest. The touch was grounding, a silent acknowledgement of trust and shared victory. I covered her hand with mine, pressing it lightly. Anytime, I said. 4 days later, the gallery buzzed with life for its quarterly exhibition. The fluorescent harshness of audit week was gone, replaced by warm gallery lighting. A string quartet played softly in the corner. The space was packed with patrons, artists, and board members. I lingered near the back in a dark suit, holding a glass of sparkling water, watching Allison move through the room. She was radiant, confident, alive. The gallery was safe. She was safe. My contract was complete, yet something kept me there. Breaking through the crowd, Allison approached, carrying 2 glasses of champagne. She offered one to me, her fingers brushing mine. Your forensic contract is done, she said, eyes locking with mine. I smiled slightly. I'm not going anywhere. I said, true security isn't in flawless ledgers or firewalls. It's in the people who stand beside you when the world demands you surrender. She linked her arm through mine, guiding me through the gallery, shoulder to shoulder. Warm light, brilliant canvases, and the quiet aftermath of a battle well fought surrounded us. I didn't need to speak. We both knew that some victories, some trust, and some bonds were simply understood. We stepped out of the boardroom together, the weight of the past hours pressing down before it finally lifted. The hallway was empty, and the late afternoon sunlight spilled through the windows, casting long golden patterns across the hardwood floor. Allison leaned back against the wall, closing her eyes. It's over, she whispered, a shaky exhale escaping her. I confirmed it's over. I stayed a few feet away, letting her breathe, letting the relief settle. The adrenaline that had been coiled tight in my chest slowly eased. I didn't touch her. That wasn't the point. We had survived the storm, and survival was its own victory. Finally, she opened her eyes. The armor she wore as gallery director, the defense mechanisms that had carried her through countless challenges, were gone. What remained was the brilliant, exhausted woman who had just fought for her life and won. "You didn't just fix the books, Luca," she said softly. "You stood up to him, you didn't let him intimidate me." "He relied on volume and authority," I said quietly. "Data doesn't care about volume, neither do I." Her hand reached out hesitantly, resting on my chest. The touch was grounding, a silent acknowledgement of trust and shared victory. I covered her hand with mine, pressing it lightly. "Anytime," I said. 4 days later, the gallery buzzed with life for its quarterly exhibition. The fluorescent harshness of audit week was gone, replaced by warm gallery lighting. A string quartet played softly in the corner. The space was packed with patrons, artists, and board members. I lingered near the back in a dark suit, holding a glass of sparkling water, watching Alison move through the room. She was radiant, confident, alive. The gallery was safe. She was safe. My contract was complete, yet something kept me there. Breaking through the crowd, Alison approached, carrying 2 glasses of champagne. She offered one to me, her fingers brushing mine. "Your forensic contract is done," she said, eyes locking with mine. I smiled slightly. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. "True security isn't in flawless ledgers or firewalls. It's in the people who stand beside you when the world demands you surrender." She linked her arm through mine, guiding me through the gallery, shoulder to shoulder. Warm light, brilliant canvases, and the quiet aftermath of a battle well fought surrounded us. I didn't need to speak. We both knew that some victories, some trust, and some bonds were simply understood. The gallery was alive with energy, the patrons' chatter weaving around the polished displays. Alison guided me through the crowd, her arm linked with mine, the subtle rhythm of her steps a quiet reassurance. We stopped near the corner, away from the crowd, yet still in the heart of the gallery she had fought to protect. She held out a sealed envelope, her hand steady now, despite everything that had just happened. "This is for you," she said softly, her eyes fixed on mine. Inside was the official offer letter, board-approved, signed, final, a permanent role as chief financial officer, someone she trusted implicitly, someone who had stood in front of corruption and survived. I opened it slowly, reading each line carefully. It was formal, precise, a legal document, yet it carried something deeper, a place in her world, a tangible acknowledgement of trust, respect, and reliability. This wasn't just a job. It was a foundation, a stake in a life she had built with painstaking dedication. "Stay tonight, Luca," she said, almost as an afterthought, her voice low, meant only for me. The gallery around us faded into background noise, the applause, the conversation, the clinking of glasses. What mattered was this moment, quiet and charged with understanding. I glanced at the gallery, at the canvases and the exhibitions, the life she had fought to preserve. Then I looked at her, the brilliant, relentless woman who had placed trust in me when the floor was collapsing beneath her. I shifted my arm, interlacing my fingers with hers. A silent promise, firm and unambiguous. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, my voice carrying the quiet conviction of someone who had learned the real meaning of security. True safety isn't in flawless ledgers or impenetrable firewalls. It's in someone who stands beside you when the world demands surrender. Real trust, real partnership, that's where strength lies. She gave a small, resolute nod, a shared acknowledgement of everything we had survived together. For once, no words were needed. The gallery hummed around us, alive with colour, sound, and promise. But in that corner there was only clarity, resolve, and the silent, unshakable connection that comes from having fought, endured, and won together. The low hum of the server tower under my desk was the only warning before a hand gripped the fabric of my jeans near the knee, using it to steady itself. I didn't react, only paused mid-keystroke. The air in the cramped back office of the downtown gallery was thick with the scent of old paper, ozone, and the hint of rain drifting in through the open window. Yet the sudden rustle of fabric shifted everything. I kept my chin level and looked down. Alison Romero, the gallery director and my boss, was crouched beneath my workstation, her crisp white blouse and dark pencil skirt incongruously sharp against the clutter of my desk and the filing cabinet that trapped her between my legs. Her normally immaculate updo had begun to unravel. She tilted her head upward, eyes tired but alert, catching the glow of my monitors. "Act normal," she whispered, barely audible over the fan hum. "Just keep working." The office door rattled. The brass handle turned, but the deadbolt I'd locked earlier held firm. A polished, familiar voice came from the other side. It was Marcus, a senior board member. "Are you in there?" he asked, his words smooth, deliberate, bureaucratic. "The auditors need the Q3 disbursement logs." I glanced at the lock, then down at Alison. Her fingers tightened around my jeans in a small, panicked gesture. I had seen this before, fear, trapped instinct. As a forensic accountant, reading numbers was my career, but reading people came just as naturally. She was cornered. I leaned forward, elbows on the desk, shielding her from view if the door gave way. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. "She's not in here, Marcus," I called out, calm and controlled, every syllable carrying the quiet precision of someone who dealt in spreadsheets and audit trails, not panic. There was a pause, then Marcus's voice, clipped and insistent. "Open the door, I need to check the main terminal." "I'm in the middle of a forensic extraction," I replied, fingers flying, running commands to uncover the routing data Marcus had tried to hide. If I broke the chain of custody, the protocol would reset, a 6-hour setback. "Do you want to explain the delay to the committee, or should I?" The silence stretched. Marcus understood leverage, but not the software I wielded. That was my edge. Finally, his voice snapped, sharp and impatient. "Have her call me the second you see her." The footsteps receded. I exhaled quietly, eyes returning to the space under the desk. "He's gone," I said. Alison let out a long, shaky breath, not relief, but the sound of a support straining under pressure. Her forehead rested against the metal desk frame. "He changed the passwords to the offshore accounts," she said, voice hollow. "I went into his office while he was on a call. He came back early if he had seen me." She shifted, revealing a worn blue leather-bound notebook pressed to her chest. The offline ledger, the physical proof that Marcus had been skimming from the gallery, not her mismanagement. "Come up here," I said, voice low but firm. She emerged from under the desk, smoothing her skirt in anxious, jerky movements, standing by the window as grey afternoon light washed over her. She was 37 years older than me, carrying the weight of the gallery on her shoulders. When she'd hired me weeks ago to fix a small discrepancy, neither of us realized it was a trap set by Marcus to force her out and seize the prime gallery real estate. "He has the board convinced the leak is coming from my terminal," Alison said, dropping the ledger onto my desk, hands trembling slightly. "The preliminary audit starts Wednesday," she warned. "If I can't prove he routed the funds to that shell company, it's not just my job on the line. The board could press charges to protect themselves." I didn't offer pity, it was worthless. Instead, I drew the ledger toward me, flipping it open. Numbers, dates, signatures. Marcus was arrogant. He trusted analog over digital, thinking a paper trail would be invisible. "Is it?" she asked softly, stepping close to see the page. I pulled up a blank spreadsheet. "Everything leaves a footprint. If I match the ledger to the server logs, we have him." Her eyes narrowed, focus sharpening. "How long?" 48 hours, I said, already typing, building a custom query to cross-reference 4,000 lines of network traffic per day. She nodded sharply, decisive. "Lock the door, pull the blinds. We stay until the numbers match the ink." The room dimmed as she lowered the blackout shades, leaving only the glow of the monitors. The city outside disappeared behind the hum of the servers and the clicking of keys. For 6 hours, silence was our only ally. By the time the boardroom doors opened at 3 p.m., the tension in the gallery felt almost tangible. 5 board members entered, faces tight with expectation, and Marcus strode in last, taking his place at the head of the table, composed but clearly prepared to defend himself. The lead auditor, a stern woman with a clipboard, projected the encrypted server data onto the screen. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, voice crisp. "After reviewing the secure network logs provided by Mr. Montgomery, we've identified a series of unauthorized wire transfers totaling $420,000, routed to a shell company in the Cayman Islands." A murmur rippled through the room. The auditor continued, "The initiating device does not belong to the director's terminal. It's a personal device registered to an executive member." Marcus leaned forward, mask of control in place. "This is alarming," he said smoothly. "It seems our network has been compromised by an external hacker spoofing internal credentials. I've warned the board for months about cybersecurity risks." Alison cut him off sharply, stepping forward. "It wasn't a hacker." She placed a copy of the blue ledger on the polished table. "This ledger contains the exact dates, amounts, and routing numbers for the missing funds, all in your handwriting, Marcus." Board members went silent, eyes darting between Marcus and the documents. "That could be anyone's handwriting," Marcus scoffed, raising his voice. "This is a desperate fabrication." I stepped up calmly, producing the network logs. This is a certified diagnostic report from the gallery's secure Wi-Fi router. It proves that the device used to initiate the transfers was logged through Marcus' personal credentials. Page 3 confirms he uploaded a photo of the ledger to his cloud account last Tuesday. Marcus' face went ashen. "You didn't just write it down," I said softly, ensuring everyone could hear. "You backed it up. The forensic trail is absolute. You are the thief." The room fell into dead silence, the kind that follows an inevitable collapse. The oldest board member finally broke it. "Marcus, is this true?" He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Every escape route had vanished. "Alison," I whispered, and she took the final step, professional, unyielding. "The board will vote immediately on your motion for termination and forward these documents to authorities. You may want to call your lawyer." 10 minutes later, Marcus was escorted out. The board voted unanimously, termination and asset freeze pending investigation. The audit continued, but the gallery and Alison were safe. We stepped into the quiet hallway, adrenaline crashing. The late sun filtered through the windows, golden and forgiving. Alison leaned back, eyes closed, exhaling a long, shaky breath. "It's over," she whispered. "It's over," I confirmed. For a moment we simply existed in the calm aftermath. No words were necessary. I could feel the relief settle between us, heavy but grounding. She opened her eyes, the exhausted armor of a long battle finally gone. "You didn't just fix the books, Luca," she said softly. "You stood in front of him, you didn't let him speak over me." "Data doesn't care about volume," I replied quietly. "Neither do I." She stepped closer, fingers resting lightly over my chest, grounding me as I had grounded her through the storm. "Thank you," she whispered. I covered her hand with mine, pressing it gently against my chest. "Anytime." 4 days later, the gallery's quarterly opening was alive with warm light and music. Patrons moved among the canvases, board members mingled, and Alison glowed in her element, safe and in control. I stood back, contract fulfilled, prepared to leave, until she approached, 2 glasses in hand. "Stay tonight, Luca," she said softly, linking her arm through mine. I looked at the gallery, then at her, the brilliant, resilient woman who had trusted me. I intertwined my fingers with hers. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. "True safety isn't found in ledgers or firewalls. It's found in someone who stands beside you when the world demands you surrender." In that moment, amidst art, sunlight, and relief, everything finally aligned.